All right, I'm officially 6 months post ACL reconstruction and meniscus repair. This video could drag out for a long time, and I'm going to try to keep it really brief with some really key topics here. Just kind of give you an update on, how my rehab's been going, where I'm at right now. Give you some insights and maybe, things that you can expect and maybe avoid. I'll give you some tips to kind of avoid certain things with your rehab process. This video I'll attempt to make it pretty, concise, but maybe save this video for later and come back multiple times and watch it, because there's going to be some good information in here with various topics. I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet, but this is a huge milestone and there's so much to cover. So yeah, make sure you like this video, save it, come back to it later. And also, if you haven't already looked at some of my earlier videos, I really documented the early first 2 months of my rehab pretty consistently. And since then, I've been a little bit more sporadic, just kind of around major milestones or huge moments in my rehab, because there's a lot of just grinding and nothing really changes overnight. So yeah, I've been kind of cutting down on the uploads. So if you're going through this rehab process, comment below with some questions that you might have that I didn't cover in this video, or even video ideas for future uploads. I can cover different topics of my process, from anything that you're out there wondering. If I'm not covering it, just let me know in the comments below. And also just kind of comment on what your rehab process is going like. Is it going well? Are you having some difficulties? What are those? Just kind of everyone sharing in the comments could help each other out. I think we all go through pretty similar things. And let me know what you think. All right, let's get into this. All right, so I'm going to cover these topics in this video. I have some notes here to kind of keep me on track so I don't ramble off. We got strength and running. So just strength training and running in the rehab process. That's one topic I'm going to cover. Also my range of motion from 0 to 6 months, kind of how that's been going, as well as any pain, aches, discomfort that I'm having still at 6 months post-surgery. Obviously early on it's a huge thing, but we'll talk about that more. And then mental, kind of the mental aspect of this recovery and rehab process. And then as well as some just miscellaneous tips that didn't really fit into those categories, but I feel like are worth sharing and I think would be helpful for those out there watching this video. And at the very end, probably a little less exciting for the viewers here, for you guys. My look ahead and what I'm going to be doing, the next couple months of my rehab and kind of what I'm planning for, my goals and all that stuff. So all right, let's just get into this. So, okay, again, I recommend checking out my earlier videos. I covered that early phase of rehab pretty in depth. I'm going to kind of hit, the highlights of those kind of early stages, but really focus more on the last, month or two of rehab and where I'm at right now. So, my quad asymmetry, so that means the difference in strength between my two quads. So, you might be able to tell in the video, my right quad is still decently small. I'm not huge to begin with. It's not huge mass in my left leg, but definitely weaker in my right. So I started out around month 2.5-ish when I switched to PTs. I had about 73% asymmetry, meaning my non-surgical leg was 73% stronger in the quad compared to my right leg. So my quad atrophied tremendously. Huge amount of muscle loss there, and it's a huge uphill battle from there. Then around 4-ish months, maybe just after 4 months post-surgery, I had about 43% asymmetry, meaning my right leg was 43% weaker still. And then around 5.5 months, we tested again, just kind of see if I'm getting closer for running purposes. And I had about 35% asymmetry. So you can kind of tell that, you make some huge gains early on and then getting closer to, perfectly symmetrical strength just slows the way down. It's kind of like as time goes on, you get less and less change there in percentage. So, the next, 20-30% is going to take quite a while, I believe, months at a time. So that's where I'm at right now. And with that, you want to be at about 10% at most, but ideally 0 to 10% asymmetry between legs. It's considered normal. So once I hit that point, it's kind of back to where I was before surgery. So what have I been doing? So, early on, I have a lot of videos there. It's just a lot of, you know, easy weight bearing things and whatnot. And around like months 3-ish, 4-ish, I started introducing strength training with, you know, heavy weights like squats. I got a squat rack back here to do stuff at home. So doing a lot of that. And the only one caveat there is that you want to make sure you're doing single leg work, because if you're doing double leg, you can compensate with your, you know, your non-surgical leg, which I've found throughout this process. The subconscious like compensating that you do, compensation, you don't even realize you're compensating by either, you know, shifting weight to your, you know, your good leg, you know, shifting angles on your bad leg to kind of not activate certain muscles that, you know, maybe might be hurting. So there's a lot of compensation going on, and you really want to focus on isolating your leg, so doing single leg activities, exercises, and also really being conscious about good form and making sure you're activating the muscles that you're you're meant to be targeting. That's something that even now at PT, I'll be doing exercise. My PT's there watching me, and he's like, "Okay, you gotta shift this way. You gotta, you know, drive your knee a little bit more forward. Make sure you're really engaging that quad, or, you know, engage the glutes a bit more there." So that's something that's been huge still, and I think that's, you know, pretty normal. So it's something to look out for on your end if you're going through this process. But I'll make a separate video on kind of like strength routines right now that I'm doing, just kind of more focused and brought out. But squats, single leg squats, double leg squats with, you know, weights here, a squat rack, leg extensions, all that stuff. I have a couple videos on my channel about my strength routine and what I've been doing periodically. So maybe check those ones out if you got any real specific questions on strength routine. But still at deep range of motion. So like if I'm squatting and I get real deep, like past 90, I think that was not even at 90 there. If I get past that 90 degrees in the quad still, where they took my quad tendon from, and just, you know, the weak quad in general, there's a lot of like tightness and pressure and a little bit of pain there. And it takes a lot of warming up to kind of get ready for an activity still. But yeah, deep range of motion is still pretty uncomfortable. And that's something I need to work through still on my end. And I'll touch on that part real quick as well. So warming up. Warming up is like a huge non-negotiable for me right now in my rehab. If I don't warm up, an activity that usually feels good after warm up will feel horrible and painful, or, you know, low level pains, at least low to mid, relatively, not quite the same scale as like after reconstruction surgery, but warm up is crucial, and you got to find something that works out for you. I know for me, doing a lot of like the leg extension quad isos, where you kind of hold out the leg extension, you're activating that quad. That really helps me get warmed up. Doing wall sits, that helps a lot. Bunch of different things, and also like dynamic stretches. If you're gonna like start doing anything, you know, with good range of motion and whatnot, doing that helps. And then once you get more into like the running phase of things, I've done a lot of like skipping and hopping to warm up, and that kind of helps me get ready, as well as some like light band exercises. And that's on top of like the leg extension isos and all that stuff. So the warm up is very crucial, and I feel like you need to plan to have warm up in your routine, like throughout this rehab process, at least for 0 to 6 months, and probably into the future for at least myself. And then so running is like a huge topic, I think, in this rehab process. Usually, if you torn your ACL, if you're watching this, you probably were active before you had surgery, I'm guessing, and that might have included, you know, running. Running is kind of a vital piece of any activity that's, you know, sport related, exercise related, whatever. So running is a kind of a huge, like, you know, when do I get back to running? So due to my situation, I didn't really start running until around almost 24 weeks. And that's just because I lost a lot of muscle in my quad. I had some quad tendon pains, which I'll touch on some more later on in the video. And so yeah, it's kind of delayed the process between me and my therapist. It wasn't really just up to me. we delayed the process to make sure that I was getting enough muscle. Usually want to be like 35% asymmetry or less. And then, yeah, so to do that, to kind of introduce running again, I did a lot of speed walking intervals with Elite Endurance Physio. He helped me get through that process, and he's helping me get back to running, and we got a lot of goals here, which I'll talk on in a second. So I started with just some speed walk intervals, you know, below 17-minute per mile pace. You know, I'm really targeting like 15-minute per mile pace, which is kind of difficult for me. I'm not really a good speed walker, but really want to target, going to really, you know, work it. So you're working those muscles, getting those legs ready for running again. So I did that for like several weeks of just, you know, speed walking. And then around week 24, like I said, I started jogging again, and that was just 30-second durations. So I had to go out for like a 30-minute activity where I had 30-second jog and then like 9.5-minute walk. That's a 1 10-minute rep. And then I do 3 of those, which I have a video on my channel. You can go look at that. I'm now up to about 4-minute duration. So doing like 3 10-minute reps. And in that rep, I have a 4-minute jog and a 6-minute walk. So working that way up, kind of eyeing up like doubling duration week over week. It's kind of like the goal right now, as long as everything holds up. And by about week 33-ish, I should be up to about 30 minutes of jogging. And that's a pretty, I think, a relatively conservative estimate. Everything's been going pretty well so far. The first week or two of it didn't feel, you know, amazing. Definitely felt weird and some discomfort in there. Felt like things needed to like kind of pop or get used to going again. But now, you know, about 4 weeks-ish after introducing the first jog activity, my knee feels pretty good as long as I have a good warm-up. And yeah, it's feeling pretty good right now with the jogging. It's definitely not the focus of my rehab. Still, strength training is like the #1 key, but the running has been a nice little addition to kind of, you know, spice things up and also add some different stimulus, and also helps work the quad as well. And another huge one, which is a kind of a tip as well, is throughout this process, you want to make sure that you're staying steady and don't overdo anything. I had an issue of, you know, I'd feel great one day and like, okay, well, let's do like 10 set squats or something crazy like that. And the next day I'm like, oof, I really worked the quad harder than I thought I did the day before. And then the second day after that, like, oof, I can't really even do like just a basic body weight squat right now without a lot of pain. So really want to make sure that, you know, even if you're feeling really good, don't overdo it. You want to kind of stay within your boundaries of, okay, let's work this muscle, let's get it stronger, but also you don't want to go into the realm of where you're going to set yourself back like a few days of not being able to do any activities and kind of really kind of delay your rehab process really by doing that, which is an issue that I had throughout my process so far, since like week or month 3-ish. That's kind of been the, for me, one of the challenges is not overdoing things when I'm feeling good. So definitely, you know, be mindful of that. You want to stay nice and steady upward trajectory. You don't want to go, you know, way up then down after a huge session, because you can't work out for a while, and then you kind of sit there and then you go back up, and then a roller coaster. So it's being mindful of staying steady and sensible with your activities and avoiding flare-ups that set you back like several days of like no activities and having to just rest your knee. So that's one of my huge tips that I wish I still followed to this day. I kind of overdo it sometimes, but it is what it is. Range of motion. So this is a huge one. I've talked about this a lot, especially in my earlier videos, the first like 2 months of rehab. Check those out. I was able to get full extension pretty much right away after surgery. It wasn't really like an active full extension because my quad was not really strong enough to kind of hold that full extension. So it wasn't really like a focus early on with my, you know, my initial physical therapist that I was seeing. And because I had that, we didn't really, you know, push it much further than just straight, which that was kind of a restriction I had with my doctor, was not to go past 0 degrees straight for 4 to 6 weeks-ish. I think 4 weeks at least. So that's just that, and that was just to protect the meniscus repair also. So a lot of information there on my earlier videos, but generally you kind of want to match either what you had before for extension. So if you hyperextend, you kind of want to match what you had before. And generally you kind of want to match what you have on your other leg just to kind of be even. So I had like something crazy like 15 or so, maybe more degrees of hyperextension in my like leg before surgery. So 0 degrees compared to 15 degrees is quite a decent range of motion there change. And that's something that my first physical therapist said, that, you know, you just want 0 because it is a little bit safer. You don't put your knee into precarious situations, or, you know, you don't put more stress on the ACL by, you know, extending it further than it really wants to be. So we didn't do that. And now I have basically maybe like 5 degrees or so of hyperextension compared to like the 15 or more on my other leg. So there's a big disparity there. My doctor does think that some of it will come back more when I get my quad muscle bigger, and it'll help me kind of extend more over time. But you really want to focus on that early on. You know, have a goal in mind, work it out with your doctor and physical therapist. Make sure you're not overdoing anything. They might have some restrictions early on to protect some part of your knee during surgery, after surgery. But generally you kind of want to match that and match what you had before. And I don't have that right now. But mentally, it's not huge at this point. It was a huge stress of mine early on for the first few months, but at this point it kind of is what it is, and I kind of gotten used to it. And I think I will get some more back over time, but I'm not probably going to have exactly what I had before. It's going to be more stiff feeling compared to before. But that is what it is. Flexion, so check my earlier videos. I had about 120-ish degrees by like week 6-ish, somewhere in there. Between month 1 and 2, I kind of got to 120. I really had to push it though. It wasn't really something that came easy to me, which I normally have like 145 to 150-ish flexion. Like I can touch my heel to my butt pretty easily. So it's definitely lacking, you know, like 10 or so degrees right now. I'm at about like 135-ish. So I want about 10 more degrees over time. And I think that will come over time. Flexion comes back easier and easier, or not easier and easier, but that's something that can come back. So it's not as much of a stress. You can kind of, you know, work that stretch over time and get it back. But definitely still lacking range of motion there. It's not something that I still work on religiously. It was a huge focus of mine for like the first 3 months, even 4 months. And then after that, I kind of slowed down and focused more on making sure my extension was good and really just working that more throughout the day, because extension is a little bit more important than the flexion, because the flexion can come back over time easier compared to extension. So I'm at about 135-ish. I've done, you know, heel slides a lot. Sitting back on it, like, you know, you kneel down on the floor and you kind of sit back on your knee to kind of bend it. I've done the like laying down and you have a strap to pull your leg to bend it. I've done everything. They all work pretty well. I think once you get past like 120-ish, I feel like the heel slides kind of don't work as well for that range of motion. They are good, but they don't push it as hard as, like, you know, sitting back on it. I think that's one of my favorite ones now for a nice stretch. And also, if you have any discomfort, like, you know, in the front of the knee or around the patella, I found putting like a towel behind my knee in the crease and bending it that way kind of helps put things in the right place. So I can bend it more and focus more on stretching the muscle rather than kind of working things that might be out of place a little bit. And that's another thing. So my patella doesn't really track totally correct still, like it'll pop. Like right now it's kind of popping, it's not really too audible, but that's something that still happens for me and something that was evident right after surgery. And my doctor said that, you know, once I get more quad muscle and it gets bigger and stronger, it'll help the patella track better, more smoothly, and it won't have all that popping and clicking and everything that's going on right now still. But at 6 months, I still have that issue right now. And then just generally like stiffness, like right now I'm a little stiff. It's early in the morning right now. I haven't done anything. I just came out here and started recording after waking up pretty much. And, you know, it'll be stiff, but I can get, you know, extension if I just kind of really kind of work it and like stretch it for like a second. Like I'll be good to go. But that wasn't really something that came easily until like the last like month 5-ish to 6, where that stiffness kind of really kind of became less of an issue, and it was kind of easier to kind of get things moving and mobile. So yeah, at this point that's feeling pretty good. So like pain, aches, discomforts. So right now at month 6, the only real pain I have usually is in my quad. I think it's from being really weak, and also sometimes the quad tendon where my graft was taken from. I had an autograft for my ACL reconstruction. And once I introduced strength training, like, you know, heavier, real strength training, the quad tendon was it was horrible. The tendon pain there. And it took a lot of warming up to like just do basic stuff for like 20 minutes. And after that kind of like was like, oh, okay, it's about time to kind of stop probably. So, and I would always overdo it and do it for longer and harder than I should have been, which kind of prolonged my early to mid-ish rehab process. So still at month 6, the quad tendon / weak quad is still kind of the area of, you know, if there's ever any pain or discomfort, that's where it is for the most part. There has been times where like the front of the knee, I think more like where they're attached my ACL in the front, kind of is achy. Maybe even like the sides, if I'm like walking on a weird angled path or roads, there'll be some aches on the sides, but weirdly just like the top of the knee and the quad area where they took my graft from. And that's pretty much it. I really don't have a whole lot of like pain and discomfort. It's really just related to my quad, and, you know, if I'm working it, doing strength training, running, whatever, it's kind of all related to that. If I didn't do any activities and I just stayed the way I am right now, I probably wouldn't have much of any pain, really. And I know people talk about icing a lot, and I think there's a place for icing, but I personally don't really ice my knee a whole lot, and I feel like the swelling is fine. I don't really know. That hasn't really been an issue. But I don't really know if icing really is anything crucial at this point. I would, you know, maybe ice it like once after like a hard workout if I really want to, but I haven't noticed any huge differences between icing and not icing after a hard workout. I'm sure there's some benefit to it, but nothing monumental. So I don't really ice it too often. I have a knee sleeve that I got after I tore my ACL, just kind of helped the swelling mainly. Since I had surgery, I haven't really worn it a whole lot. I've worn it here and there sometimes. And I feel like it doesn't really provide a ton of benefit. Obviously early on might be good for compression, for swelling. But now when the swelling's not really an issue, I don't really see a huge benefit when I wear it, except for maybe just like the mind-muscle connection. It kind of helps me kind of sense where things are a little better by having that sensory of the wrap around my knee. And I feel like that kind of helps activate some muscles a little bit easier, because that's kind of one of the hardest parts right now is activating muscles. But knee sleeves, I don't really know if they really help with, you know, the aches and discomforts and stuff, except if you have some swelling maybe that you need to work on, which is not a really huge issue for me anymore. I want to touch on kneeling, because I know that's one of the kind of a big topic about different grafts and choosing, you know, patella tendon graft or quad graft or hamstring or allograft, whatever. Kneeling, I don't have like huge pain. It's more like it doesn't feel right still, and there's some discomfort. It's probably just some, you know, desensitizing that I need to do to kind of help be able to kneel a little bit easier. But I don't really have a huge issue with the kneeling. It's more like I just don't do it very often. It just feels weird still at this point. But there isn't really like any huge pain there, so kneeling's okay. And really, I feel, like I kind of said already, I feel mostly normal for like basic life, normal activities. It's when I start to do anything athletic or, harder on my knee, is when I notice like, okay, yeah, this is still a recovering knee. So I can definitely see how people might be overconfident at this stage in their knee, thinking like, okay, yeah, it feels good. I can do something, I can go run and cut real quick, or I can play like 5 minutes of a sport with some friends real quick. It's okay. I'm 6 months post-op, but definitely still lacking strength, the ability to like cut and everything. But for daily life, it feels normal, but definitely not ready for anything crazy. Okay, and then the mental side of things. So I'll keep this one a little bit shorter because this could be a huge, long topic already. It's a long video. Huge one, patience. Nothing changes overnight. You need to just be patient with this process. Something that I've had a hard time with and I've gotten a little bit better at over time. I mean, it comes easier once you kind of hit some milestones and you're like, get a little bit of peace of mind. But patience is a huge thing of this process. It's not short. It's definitely a long road, long journey. So just staying patient, give yourself some grace. Don't expect huge changes overnight or over like a week even. You might have a good week, you might have a bad week, but it all kind of evens out in the end, and you just need to stay patient with this journey. That's one of my huge tips and mental things that could kind of just set you up for success, is just staying patient. It'll relieve a lot of stress. I know it would for me, at least early on, just staying patient. I kind of talked about it already, but there's already a lot of ups and downs. It's not a linear process. You're going to have great days, bad days, great weeks, bad weeks, great month, bad month, really. I've had it all at this point. It's really an up and down process. You got to take it as it comes and just know that, if you stick with it, keep grinding, good things will come. You're making progress, even if it feels like you're not. You might be stagnating. You might have a huge milestone, like, yes, I'm past this phase of rehab and I can kind of do all this stuff. It's going to be awesome from here on out. And then you stagnate for like a month or something. So just know that it's not a clear linear process. It's up and down. You just got to get ready for that journey. It's something that will really kind of teach you a lot about yourself, and kind of help you with other aspects of life, because this is not an easy process. You got to just take it as it comes, enjoy every moment, and just be thankful that you're even still able to kind of be through this process and have the chance to be back to where you were. So just stick with it and be patient. And then also staying motivated is a huge one, because like I said, up and down, it's at some points depressing at rehab, but just really being patient and staying motivated is one of the huge things. So even when things get tough, you need to stay motivated. You need to find little goals to kind of give yourself to kind of get through the week, get through an activity. Even sometimes you don't really want to work out, but you really need to. Just kind of give yourself a little goal to kind of get through that thing. And also switching up your routines. Don't always do the same thing over and over unless it's something that you really like doing. But just switching it up, having a varied routine can kind of help keep that motivation and excitement of rehab going on, because it's a long marathon of a rehab process. So patience, stay motivated, and just taking the ups and downs as it comes. That's going to really set you up for success with this process. I feel like it's 50% physical, 50% mental, if not even more mental than that, because really you're just kind of, the mental aspect of you want to be back to where you were before surgery, before you tore your ACL. You want to be back there as soon as possible, but it takes time, and it's not harder on the physical. I mean, it is. It's humbling, what's challenging now for my knee compared to a year ago, but really just staying mentally tough and sticking with it is really going to get you through a lot of this rehab process. Okay, and some quick tips that don't really fit into a category. Finding a good physical therapist. Huge one. You need someone who's going to align with your goals, who's going to challenge you, who, you respect. Not really that's an issue, but, you trust their opinion, basically. You need someone who's going to work with you and not just, see you as another patient and get you in and out the door. You need someone who knows your story, who's going to get you back to where you want to be and knows your goals and challenges you every day. So really finding a good physical therapist is huge. And don't be afraid if you think you're not really getting what you need from someone. Try somewhere else. What's worse is going to happen? You know, you take like a week of getting up to speed with a new physical therapist, but after that, you might have a huge difference in your rehab process, which is kind of what I had in my journey. So if you're not getting what you need out of your physical therapist, you know, I urge you to maybe look somewhere else instead of giving up on physical therapy altogether. It is what it is. Some people are great with this rehab, some are not. So just find someone who can help you and challenges you and get you where you want to be. And another big tip, there's a lot of videos out there, I feel like, who try to promote products. Maybe they got ads or they're getting sponsored by something. I really feel like you don't need any gimmicks with this process. You're just strength training, getting back to running, you know, working on your range of motion and all that stuff. You don't need any gimmicks. You don't need any special tools that'll help you. Just find stuff around the house that you have that'll help you do, you know, proper, you know, right after surgery, proper leg up. Just find some pillows. You don't need to buy a $100 little cushion that keeps your legs straight. Now, if you really need it and you have the money, sure, go for it. But you don't really need those kind of gimmicks in this process. It's all basic. You know, I don't even need this squat rack. I could just find some stuff around the house that's kind of heavy and hold on to it and do some squats if I really wanted to. Don't fall in the trap that you need gimmicks for this process. There's not really like a magic pill that's going to help you achieve a certain milestone or whatever. There are some good things out there that you can get, but nothing's really going to help you achieve things. You need to do it yourself. It's all about your own effort and putting the work in. So don't fall for these little gimmicks and products. You don't need any of that stuff. The only thing I would recommend is find something that makes your process easier, as in, you know, get a squat rack if you need to. That's not really a great example because it's not really accessible. But, you know, buying bands. I didn't have bands before this, and I went like 4 months without any bands, and I wish I had gotten them earlier because they made everything much easier for like my leg extension ISOs, just getting some good bands together. I wish I would have done that from the very beginning. So just finding things that help you do what you need to do easier. Don't buy things that'll promise you little gimmicks and, you know, performance benefits and whatnot, because really it's just all about your effort. Just find things that make things easier for your rehab process. And that's kind of it. There's a million things I could cover more in this video. I could drag this out even longer. I think it's at like over 30 minutes right now. I'll hopefully cut this down from what it's at right now for my recording. I got some bad takes I can cut out for you guys, so I can turn that down, but it's a long video. I can cover so much more in this because it's a crazy rehab process. There's so many little aspects to it. So like I said at the beginning, drop a comment below if you got any questions or things you want to see in a separate video that's more focused. I can really dive into those topics there. But my look ahead going into the next phase of things is really just strength training. So getting my knee back to, you know, full strength, which could take up to like maybe even a year. It's a long process really. But once I get to the point where I'm feeling pretty good about my strength, introducing sport specific drills like cutting, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know, hopping onto boxes and stuff, whatever, plyometrics, you know, the heavier stuff. That's kind of where I'm going. I'm also targeting being able to do like a 5K by about before month 8 is over. Complete like a 5K, nothing crazy, not sprinting, but just be able to jog for the full 5K, you know, maybe put some little effort into it. So that one's coming up. I'll make a separate video on that one, most likely in the near future, in about a month or so. A huge one is deciding when to come back to sport, which I'll obviously touch on that more in future videos. Not even a really consideration for me right now until at least after 1 year post-surgery. There's a lot of studies about, you know, the rates of re-injury and, you know, by which month you come back to sport, you know, 6 months to 1 year. There's huge decrease there, and even from 1 year to 2 years is a huge decrease. And some studies show that your graft for your new ACL doesn't really finish fully healing until about 2 years post-surgery, so that's something to consider as well. So yeah, just strength training. I got some running goals coming up, some 5Ks and whatnot, and also kind of considering when to go back to sports. So that's my look ahead. I'll cover this much more in future videos, but just give you something to consider and ponder upon until my next video comes out, if you're watching this now. And yeah, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you got some benefit out of this. Please like and subscribe if you got any benefit from this, if you're interested in my journey back to where I was before surgery. So yeah, I appreciate it, and have a great day, guys. Yoop.